Well, a good Tuesday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. So we're going to go over what's in store for rain chances for the rest of the day. You probably walked out the door and saw your fair share of showers, maybe even some lower end thunderstorms. But we'll talk about the setup that we do have and how that's going to continue as we head into the second half of the work week and all the way into your weekend forecasts. So first things first, let's start out with your satellite and radar picture. And you can see a couple of hours ago, it was quite messy with a good amount of widespread rain. All that does remain here in central Georgia is going to be mainly just some light sprinkle showers across Wheeler County, maybe portions of very East Lawrence County, Treutlen County, Montgomery County, and this cluster continues to move off towards the east. Emmanuel County seeing some pretty widespread sprinkles, maybe a few still trying to linger in Johnson County. But then behind this, you do see plenty of cloud cover, and as we continue to look off into the west, we are getting some areas of clearing, so some peaks of sunshine look to be in order as we head into the late morning and early afternoon hours. That could warm up our surface a little bit, and as we go into this afternoon, it's going to contribute to more scattered showers and still some storm potential, but it's going to be more reminiscent of what we typically see during the summertime months when we're hot and we're humid and we get showers and storms that flare up virtually out of nowhere. So taking a look at your headlines, afternoon and evening rain, that's the main timing that we are looking for anything of the way of rain. Some of it could, of course, linger into the overnight and early morning hours like we did see this morning. A few storms, they still remain in the cards, even a stronger or a severe storm. We're getting into June. We're approaching the beginning of the summer season. It's not all that atypical to start to see some strong and severe storms just scattered about, but looking at them to be more isolated in nature as opposed to widespread and organized, what we did see as of last night, that line pushing through. Staying warm and staying muggy, and that is going to be a big factor of why we continue to just see rain chance after rain chance on every day of your 7-day forecast. Here's the scene across all four of our sky cams here just shy of the 11 a.m. hour. A little bit cloudy still up here in downtown Macon, but this is facing more of a northerly direction. I imagine if we turn this camera over to the west on top of Atrium Health Navicent, we would get an image kind of what you see down here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. That clearing and cloud cover, some sunshine finally trying to dry up the wet roads and wet sidewalks we've had present all morning long. Dublin still a tad bit cloudy and seeing some peaks of sunshine down here in Warner Robins as well. Looks like there's a bit of a passing cloud providing some shade for some areas, but some sunshine to that luscious green grass down there off Cohen Walker Drive. Here's a look at your visibility. You can see that everyone is virtually back to normal now. Some areas of some patchy fog did build in throughout this morning. However, it was more of the rain that was a factor for your early morning commute, not necessarily that low level cloud cover. But if we do have standing water still at the surface combined with this humid atmosphere, we'll look at some areas of patchy fog, maybe even some dense fog to continue to build into your forecast that will play a factor in limiting your visibility as you make your way out the door. Here's a look at your temperatures, mid 70s, some low 70s, a couple of upper 70s. Everyone's still shy of the 80-degree mark, but now that we're finally getting the clouds to clear out and we can get a good image of some sunshine, that's going to continue to warm those surface temperatures. We'll see these numbers start to climb up to the 80-degree mark and not quite stop there, maybe a tad bit warmer than we did get as of yesterday throughout the warmest portion of today. Here's a look at the dew points map. Mix of light green and dark green, so still noticing that muggy air that you can wear in some spots. A little more bearable in areas where you do see the dew point temperatures in the 60s, but although a dew point temperature of 69 degrees as opposed to 70 from Butler over to Warner Robins, not really feeling too much different whatsoever. The humid and the muggy air mass is going to remain in place. However, we do have a frontal boundary that is trying to drive down from the north and the northwest as we go throughout today. Unfortunately, it's not looking to pass through central Georgia and push out all of this dark green color. However, it is going to kind of sit to the north of us, and we're going to be locked in this section of warm and muggy air for the foreseeable future. So your feels like temperatures, once you start to crawl into the upper 70s actual temperature wise, that's when the humidity plays more of a role in what it does feel like. Feels like 80 degrees in Americus, but everyone else still feeling pretty true to their actual temperature values, maybe even a little bit cooler in some areas because of that rain-cooled air that did just move through a couple hours ago. We won't see this for very much longer. We are going to see an increase in these numbers and seeing some of the warmer numbers over to the west and the southwest, those areas that were the first to get some clearing in the cloud cover. How about the winds and the wind gusts? A steady breeze, maybe about 5 to 10 miles per hour, an occasional gust up to 12 miles per hour up there in Baldwin County right now. But this blue color is not as widespread as it was as of yesterday. We had plenty of blue on the winds and wind gust map, even plenty of shades of yellow. We could even see some occasional gusts today that get above 15 to 20 to 25 miles per hour that could be associated with a localized thunderstorm. Doesn't have to necessarily be of the stronger nature, but we do know yesterday was a pretty windy day. Even if you did have some rain, you did have some thunderstorms or not looking at as much of a breeze throughout your Tuesday afternoon. So now let's go to your surface map. Let's talk about some of these features that you do see just to the north of us, because right now, actually no real big scale features that are actually impacting our forecast down here in the south and the southeast. I do want to note there are a couple of yellow boxes approaching the Charleston area in South Carolina. That actually did sprout a tornado warning as of maybe about an hour ago. So we're continuing to see these strong and maybe even some brief spin-up tornado signatures associated with some of the storms all around us. Haven't necessarily seen it come to fruition here in central Georgia, but we did get 2 severe thunderstorm warnings as of late last night as we got close to the midnight hour. But let's go ahead and talk about some of these features. So number one, immediately to the north of us, you do see this stationary boundary. It's going to be that mix of the warm front and the cold front with the red and the blue icons right here. So you can see that the stationary front does move off towards the west of that low pressure center, which is up somewhere in central Virginia right now. And we do have a cold front immediately behind it. So that's going to be this continuous line of just the blue arrows that are pointing down towards the south. This cold front up here is going to act as kind of a driving mechanism for this stationary boundary. It's going to push this farther down to the south and the southeast throughout today. Although we're not necessarily looking at frontal passage with this, like I was referring to earlier. Both of these fronts, they may kind of merge together. The stationary front may kind of take over, but it's going to move a little bit farther to the south. And this is going to act as kind of a focal point of where rain is going to pop up over the next couple of days. There's going to be a lot of lift ahead of these boundaries, so wherever they do sit, it's going to enhance the lift of all that surface moisture. And of course, you combine that with just your general daytime heating, that rising motion of some of the warmer air that can obviously lead to the pop-up showers and thunderstorms that we're talking about to really just show up on the satellite and radar picture out of nowhere almost. So whichever one of these does decide to kind of take over, it could be this backside one, it could be this initial stationary boundary, doesn't really matter because one of them is going to sit to the north of us over the next couple of days, and areas down towards the south of these stationary boundaries are still locked in that warm and humid air that I was talking about. So we'll still see our fair share of scattered weather in the form of showers and storms, maybe not necessarily as strong or severe as areas that are along this actual frontal boundary, but where this frontal boundary does kind of park itself is still a little bit up in the air. It could be to the north of us. We've seen some areas show that it's going to park itself right over central Georgia. And once we get to the day one storm outlook, you'll kind of get a general idea of the fluctuation of where that boundary will sit over the next couple of days. Well, really just today, because that's the only day that we have to talk about in terms of the storm outlooks. First things first, we'll talk about the numbers. 86 degrees. So we were about 4 degrees shy of average for yesterday. I think it was 85. So we did have a little bit of some mishaps and maybe a little bit of some bad readings with the weather data at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. 67 was our low yesterday, and that was right on par. So we did see almost a 20-degree increase from that morning low temperature, even into the afternoon high temperature, despite plenty of cloudy skies and plenty of rain throughout the day. Record high is 100 back in 1954. Still very thankful we are well shy of the triple digits, and very thankful that we are out of the 50s, not feeling a chill in the air whatsoever like we did back in 1931. It says we didn't record any precipitation yesterday at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. Not necessarily buying that. The rain was pretty widespread yesterday, so maybe they just didn't quite get the numbers off the sensor. They need to do some tinkering to figure out that actual value, but we'll figure that out over the next couple of days. I do anticipate that we're hovering a little bit above this number of nearly 0.4 of an inch above where we should be this time of year in terms of rainfall. 6:26 was the sunrise yesterday, 8:42 was the sunset. We're going to keep a close eye on those times over the next couple of days because we have about 10 days until the official start of summer, which is the longest day of the year. After that, sunrise will get a little bit earlier and sunset will be a little bit earlier as well. Hour by hour, let's talk about those temperatures. Mid 70s, upper 70s, it does finally look like we see a good jump for the temperatures that we have been receiving all morning. They haven't fluctuated much under the cloud cover and under the rain-cooled air, but as the clouds continue to break apart, we're expected to rise up somewhere into the mid 80s today. You can see this meteorogram right here has us topping out maybe around 84 degrees, fluctuating between 84 and 85 as we go into the warmest portion of the day. The high temperature, once again, is going to be dependent on what time the rain does start to pop back up into the picture later on this afternoon into the evening hours. But your forecast for today is still remaining the same. We've seen some changes throughout the morning hours. We've seen us added into a severe weather outlook. Overall, it's still going to be a very summer-like day. We're going to get partly cloudy skies. You're going to warm up during the first part of the day. I still think a high temperature in the upper 80s is definitely within reach. And of course, probably going to feel a little bit warmer because the humid air remains in place. Not quite getting to average, but we have plenty more days for the rest of the week that are forecasted to be pretty close to where that average high temperature of 90 is going to be. Scattered showers and storms. So yesterday we had more of a driving force associated with our potential for some rain, and we do have another one of those today. However, it does look to be just to the north of us, so maybe not necessarily as widespread in nature. That's why I say it's going to be more of a summer-like day. You warm up, you get your sunshine during the first half of the day, and then rain starts to sprout as we go into the warmer portions of the afternoon in light of warmer temperatures and in light of plenty of humidity present. A steady breeze, maybe about 5 to 10 miles per hour out of the west. Some occasional gusts can get above 15 miles per hour, and that's really going to be those areas where you start to get some heavy pockets of rain, maybe associated with a low-end thunderstorm or even a stronger storm in nature, because that does remain in the cards today. Now let's talk about Future View. What does it have to say? Future View has struggled very much over the last 3 weeks, but we're continuing to kind of get a better idea of what's in store later on today. This is flash forwarding a couple hours, so I know I did just start the graphic, but you see right here the timestamp 3 p.m. later on your Tuesday afternoon. Starting to see maybe an organized line of rain, a couple of pockets of heavier rain, so some thunderstorms pushing in from the north and the northwest. It does look like mainly is going to be fairly broken if this line does try to push through, and I'm not necessarily sure that we will see the organization that Future View does say with this, but we are looking at this to kind of pop up and sprout as we get into the late afternoon and evening hours, just like we did see with yesterday's rain chances. Some pockets of red within there, so you can expect maybe a stronger storm or two in nature. Once again, it's just not atypical as we have the heat and we have the humidity present. We're nestled between the Gulf and we're nestled between the Atlantic, so we continue to have moisture available to us virtually nonstop during these summertime months. And like I said, when you get the warmer temperatures, that surface heating, that rising motion of that warm air at the surface will pick up that moisture and it will continue to lift it up into the sky, and that's going to produce some higher cloud tops, but it's only going to do that in isolated areas for the potential for stronger or severe weather. But maybe a little bit of organization today behind maybe a little bit of organization today behind today's chance for seeing some scattered showers, maybe even some storms in nature. As we go into the cooler portions of the day, just like this past evening, we'll once again see most of this activity start to weaken in nature. Some rain still may hang out during the overnight and early morning hours, may welcome you out the door for your Wednesday morning. But overall, the activity looks relatively benign compared to what we're dealing with for this afternoon and evening. So 8 a.m. on Wednesday, starting to get some peaks of sunshine. Doesn't really look like activity starts to flare up until we get just past lunchtime. Temperature is going to be warm once again, getting some clearing in that cloud cover. A lot more scattered tomorrow because it does look like that boundary may sit just to the north of us. So we're just going to be in that warm and humid section of air. So the rain is going to be very scattered. It's all going to depend on how warm your temperatures get in localized areas, how much moisture content you have in those localized areas. And if you have the perfect ingredients, well, that's going to continue to sprout scattered rain all throughout the day. Some of it could become a little bit more intense in nature. You see 8 p.m. here on Wednesday, maybe a couple of pockets of some stronger weather. And then going into the nighttime hours, rinse and repeat, starting to fizzle out and de-intensify, starting out Thursday morning nice and dry. And then Thursday afternoon, all of these bubbles start to pop back up just past lunchtime, continue about the afternoon hours into the evening hours. But once we go past sunset, it doesn't really have too much to work with going into the overnight hours when the temperatures are starting to cool, and all of that activity does weaken in nature. So let's talk about our day one storm outlook. Haven't talked about it this morning, and if you did catch me during the morning show and now you're watching this stream, you're probably wondering, what am I referring to with the day one storm outlook? I was rejoicing earlier this morning because it did end our streak of no severe weather outlooks for today, because finally we were excluded from a risk. Well, as of 8 a.m., they decided to pop us in a level 1 out of 5 risk just to cover the bases in case any of our storms popped up a strong or a severe tag later on this afternoon. The potential threats we're looking at: gusty winds, large hail. Once again, it's kind of those summertime storms that we are pretty used to seeing just about each and every day. And I know it's been a while since we were really in that summertime pattern. Also, I think kind of the reasoning for this is because we have a little bit of driving motion, a little bit of organization as those boundaries do try to creep closer and closer to us. So maybe a little bit of a helping hand in terms of a lifting force associated with some of those boundaries, depending on how far they do sag farther to the south. But I do want to drag this back actually a little bit, because I said we would talk about this. You can see kind of the general shape of this. So those frontal boundaries to the north of us, it's looking like the SPC thinks that they're going to push well down into the deep south and the southeast. So this boundary could kind of just be draped along the north side of this level 1 shaded area, maybe just slightly into it. But you can see this shape going back all the way over to Texas and up the Atlantic coast, covering South Carolina, North Carolina, up into areas of coastal Virginia, getting up into Maryland. So it does look like this frontal boundary sits pretty close to our neck of the woods, and it's going to be kind of a sufficient ingredient for some lift to maybe enhance some showers into more so some storms. This is far from a guarantee that we see anything in the way of severe weather throughout today. Just be on the guard for any possible warnings that you may receive and continue about your daily activities. This is going to become the normal as we go throughout the next couple of weeks. We'll probably have 20, 30, or 10% chances of rain just about each and every day, unless we really dry out and we get a day's relief from that very muggy air that you can wear. So go ahead and get used to this, but there is a little bit of a helping hand, like I mentioned, with that lifting mechanism today. That's why we are included in a level 1 out of 5 risk. But once we get into the typical summertime swing of things, where it's just going to pop up off the heat of the day and the humidity that we have present, we won't be included in these level risk whatsoever each and every day. So we could settle into more of that pattern throughout tomorrow, because we don't find ourselves in any sort of risk here in central Georgia on the day 2 storm outlook. We were hoping that the count would end at 4 days straight, but unfortunately we extended the streak to 5 days in a row with a severe weather risk for central Georgia. Thankfully, it's only a level 1 as opposed to all the level 2s of the past couple of days, but I think the streak will end at 5, given that we do not see any kind of upgrade for the day 2 storm outlook, and it does look more and more like we're settling into more of a summertime pattern, the heat of the day, the pop-up showers and storms. And this idea is reciprocated for day 3 as we extend it out into Thursday. No level risk whatsoever in central Georgia, in the state of Georgia, and in any of our neighboring states. The only one we saw was just a flash of a level 1 over in Texas for your Thursday. So let's talk about that humidity. This is going to be a good indication of where those frontal boundaries do sit that we were talking about. Going through today, doesn't quite look like they've made their way well down to the south. We still see the patchy areas of dark green. We still see the light green that is present virtually all over the state. But as we go overnight, you can see a little bit of that no color area try to push into central Georgia. Still looks like we're going to remain pretty well south of whatever boundary. I think that this kind of top edge of the dark green is going to be a good indication, maybe as far as south that the boundary does try to push. So we're going to be just to the south of it and still going to have sufficient lift that is a little bit to the north of us. And we may see some storms come in from the north and the northwest, and that's going to be kind of because the front is still continuing to push anything that is ahead of it, anything that it is lifting up. Kind of think of it as a shopping cart that you are putting away in the parking lot at Publix. When you push that shopping cart, it continues to roll for a little bit, even though you have stopped and you are at a dead stop. So as that front pushes down, it may hit a dead stop, but the motion of some of those storms are still going to sag down into central Georgia for a little bit until they lose all of their force behind it, like your shopping cart would. It eventually does stop if you continue to roll it into a parking lot like that. So we do see this sector of very muggy air remaining present. It fluctuates a little bit between day and night, but overall it does look like we're still dealing with mostly that dark green color, unfortunately. So not only is the humidity going to be here to sprout afternoon rain chances, it's also going to do a number in terms of our feels like temperatures. So let's go over that for just a little bit. Your afternoon highs, upper 80s, around 90 degrees for the next 5 days. Not all atypical for what our average high temperature is this time of year, because you see that 90 up there in the top right of the screen. We definitely do see our fair share of some temperatures that are a lot warmer than this time of year. However, these are the actual numbers. When you factor in, yes, the humidity day by day, and like I said, we'll see some fluctuation according to the time of day, but it does look like virtually still going to deal with the humid air all throughout the next couple of days into the weekend, and that pattern does continue into next week. So when you factor in the humidity with those temperatures, we could feel like the low 90s throughout today. Thankfully, none of these areas over to the west of us or kind of southwest. We may see some of that dark red color try to creep in, so some 93s, 94s, not out of the realm of possibility. Going into tomorrow afternoon, steady uptick in those numbers, maybe feeling like 93 or 94 in nature before the rain does get going and provides you with some of that rain-cooled air. And then a step or two farther as we go into Thursday afternoon, feeling like the mid-90s here in central Georgia. So going to be warm, going to be humid in those periods where you're not receiving any rain whatsoever. Be sure that you are staying hydrated, packing the sunglasses, wearing some sunscreen if you're going out golfing or you're spending extended periods of time outside. This is going to definitely have its summer feel, and it's about time we kind of got that summer feel in the air with it being the month of June now, actually almost halfway through June. No relief is in sight, just flashing you through the long-range models once again to show you that greens and blues are going to be scattered not only here in Georgia, but all across the deep south, all across the Mississippi River Valley, getting into the Ohio River Valley, up along the mid-Atlantic coast. It is just going to be a messy scene for the next couple of days as we go throughout the weekend. Afternoon to evening and nighttime frame, that second half of each day is going to typically be when you start to see your fair share of scattered rain chances in the form of showers and storms. And that continues on into Monday. As far as we can go out is Tuesday at 4 p.m. and there's plenty of shaded areas that are really close to us, but maybe we'll finally get some light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe we'll finally see a good indication of a front sweeping through to usher in some slightly drier air. Here's a look at your 7-day forecast. Steady uptick in those high temperatures, but overall just kind of bouncing around from the upper 80s to near 90 degrees, probably feeling a little bit warmer each day. A thunderstorm and a partly cloudy thunderstorm icon will exist each and every day. I know rain chances once again crowding any of your weekend plans, and especially Father's Day on Sunday. Just continue to play it by ear because there will be dry stretches with some sunshine that are going to be warm and muggy. Maybe lucking out and not seeing anything in the way of rain. These chances are a lot more scattered than what we did see as of yesterday. So go ahead and keep those outdoor plans. If things get dark, things get a little bit loud outside that are kind of approaching near you, then of course make plans to go inside, ride that out from the safety of indoors, and then after the storm does pass you, then you're good to go back outside. That's all it is. It's kind of a duck and dodge game once we get into the summertime months. So don't fret it. It's just kind of the name of the game as we get into the summertime months. If we have any warnings, of course, we're going to continue to keep you updated if any of those do sprout during the afternoon, evening, nighttime frames. And hopefully the mornings will be a bit of a sigh of relief and we can get some beautiful sunrises to welcome you out the door each and every day.